All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're looking at one of the most absolutely awe-inspiring predators to ever exist on our planet. Imagine a creature hitting 18 meters in length, weighing a staggering 65 tons, and just ruling the global oceans with absolute dominance 23 million years ago. We are, of course, talking about the original Megalodon. But we aren't just looking at the past today. We're going to explore exactly how this titan lived, why it vanished, and most fascinatingly, what our world would look like right now if it hadn't. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture yourself chilling on a beautiful island beach, just wading into the surf. Suddenly, a dorsal fin, literally the size of a small boat, breaches the surface. You're sharing the water with a modern, highly evolved 200-ton Meg 2.0. Could you survive? Could our modern maritime industry survive? Well, to figure that out, we first need to understand the terrifying reality of the original beast. Part 1. The Apex Ocean Predator. So, the reality of the Megalodon is almost stranger than fiction. In ancient Greek, Megalodon literally translates to big tooth. And yeah, for very good reason. These creatures were packing enormous, serrated teeth the exact size of an adult human hand. They were the undisputed apex predators of the Miocene epoch. Now, consider this massive number for a second: 40,000. Unlike humans, sharks continuously shed and replace their teeth throughout their entire lives, losing a set almost every 2 weeks. So, over a single megalodon's lifetime, it would produce and shed up to 40,000 of those hand-sized, razor-sharp teeth. They'd sink to the ocean floor and fossilize, which is exactly why we find so many of them scattered all across the globe today. But what were those giant teeth actually chewing through? Well, a megalodon required an astonishing 1,100 kilograms of food every single day. Just to put that into perspective, that's the equivalent of eating 2 whole cows, or roughly 10,000 quarter-pounder burgers, on a daily basis. To sustain that kind of massive caloric intake, they primarily feasted on large, meaty baleen whales. And to take down a whale, they employed a ruthless, high-pressure hunting strategy. First, they'd slide into the water beneath their prey, totally unseen. Then, they'd shoot up vertically, slamming into the animal at incredibly high speeds. Just imagine the sheer kinetic force of 65 tons of pure muscle pummeling a whale. Finally, while the prey was completely stunned from this massive full-body blow, the megalodon would sink its massive teeth right into the ribcage, ending the fight instantly. With a jaw spanning 4.5 meters, it could comfortably swallow victims the size of a family car whole. Part 2. Why the Megalodon died. Let's move along and see how this builds, because with a hunting strategy that flawless, what could possibly take down the king of the ocean? Actually, it wasn't a bigger fish or an asteroid. It was a rapidly changing climate that ultimately starved the ultimate apex predator. Around 23 million years ago, the Megalodon was thriving in warm tropical global oceans. But as we move into the Pliocene epoch, the climate began to drastically cool. By 2.6 million years ago, the Pleistocene Ice Age hit with severe freezing temperatures. Sea levels plunged by 200 meters, which dried up coastal regions, and shifting tectonic plates closed crucial ocean pathways. The warm water nurseries where megalodons safely raised their young were entirely destroyed, and their primary food supply, the baleen whales, either migrated to freezing waters where the megalodon just couldn't easily follow, or they died out entirely. So the crucial takeaway here is that the megalodon was suddenly forced to compete for smaller, faster prey like dolphins and seals, and it lost that battle to a much smaller rival, the great white shark. Being only 1/3 the size of the megalodon, the great white was vastly more nimble, required a fraction of the food to survive, and easily outmaneuvered the massive, starving megalodon for the remaining food sources. The biggest shark to ever live simply starved to death. Part 3. Debunking the survival myth. Now, despite the scientific consensus, the internet is absolutely flooded with rumors and conspiracy theories claiming the megalodon never actually went extinct. People love to speculate that it just retreated into the deepest, darkest corners of the ocean to survive, right? The most popular claim is that they're hiding out in the Mariana Trench. But let's look at the facts here. The megalodon was a warm water shark. While it could generate some internal body heat, the freezing near-zero temperatures of the deep Mariana Trench would be an instant death sentence for them. Furthermore, if a massive predator requiring thousands of pounds of food daily was actually roaming the deep, we would absolutely see gigantic, unmistakable bite marks on the bodies of modern whales, or we'd find fresh carcasses. But we haven't found a single shred of modern evidence. Now, you might be wondering, well, if they died out, why don't we ever find intact megalodon skeletons like we do with dinosaurs? The answer lies in their biology. Sharks are not made of bone. Their skeletons are composed of cartilage. That's the same firm, flexible tissue found in your ears and nose. And cartilage decomposes incredibly rapidly in the ocean. That's why nature only left us their highly calcified jaws and teeth, leaving the rest of their massive bodies completely lost to time. But what if we rewrote history? What if, through a miraculous twist of fate and biology, the megalodon didn't starve? What if it actually possessed the genetic flexibility to borrow survival traits from other marine animals that successfully beat the Ice Age? Part 4. Designing Megalodon 2.0. To survive the extreme freeze and a shifting food chain, our shark would need some serious biological upgrades. Let's step into a highly speculative scenario and genetically engineer an adapted, highly evolved version of this creature. Let's design Meg 2.0. First off, we've got to shrink it. By pulling a trait from the winter skate, our megalodon shrinks its body size by 50%, drastically lowering its massive caloric needs. Second, to outcompete the agile great whites, we borrow from orcas. Our Meg 2.0 now hunts in highly coordinated pods of 5. Third, it needs a broader diet. Like the bonnet-head shark, it becomes omnivorous, eating squid, seals, and even seagrass to survive the lean times. And finally, to brave the cold, it grows a thick layer of whale-like insulating blubber and adopts the great white strategy of birthing in deep waters, safely away from those unpredictable, shifting coastlines. So fast forward to 11,700 years ago, and the last ice age finally ends. The global oceans warm up and fill with life once again. Our highly adapted Meg 2.0's DNA signals that it is time to grow. It rapidly doubles in size, ballooning to a staggering 30 meters in length and weighing an unbelievable 200 tons. That is as heavy as 33 elephants combined, powered by a beating heart literally the size of a car. It resumes its rightful place as the unchallenged, undisputed king of the ocean. Part 5. Humans vs. the Meg. And that brings us to the modern 21st century era. Humanity has conquered the land, sure, but with Meg 2.0 patrolling the seas, our relationship with the ocean would look drastically different. Because of its newly evolved colossal 200-ton size, the modern Meg 2.0 would require roughly 3,600 kilograms of food daily to survive. If it turned to humans, that's the equivalent of eating 45 to 60 people every single day. But hey, there's good news. Humans don't actually have enough blubber. To a Meg 2.0, we would be incredibly unnutritious, essentially the equivalent of a tiny piece of candy instead of a hearty meal. The bad news, though, is their sheer presence would severely impact modern maritime life. With their pack-hunting mentality inherited from orcas, swarms of Meg 2.0s would aggressively target and destroy commercial fishing boats that tried to compete for their food. Human swimming would be strictly restricted to heavily guarded, highly monitored shallow zones, because a stray Meg in choppy waters might accidentally take a chomp out of a swimmer, just mistaking them for a seal. On top of that, their voracious appetite would decimate fish populations, effectively wiping out the commercial fishing industry and pretty much removing things like sushi from our menus entirely. But let's ground ourselves back in sobering reality for a minute. Even a 200-ton Meg 2.0 might not survive the 21st century, because it would face the true ultimate apex predator, us. Modern humans overfish the oceans at a staggering rate. We catch over 300 million fish and 73 million sharks yearly, often just for their fins. In a world dominated by human industrial fishing, our resurrected Meg 2.0 would likely face starvation all over again as we systematically strip the oceans of its food supply. Yet, the story of evolution is a constant, unpredictable battle, right? As global temperatures rise today, sea levels are creeping upward, expanding warm waters both northward and southward. If these climatic shifts pushed a desperate, highly evolved Meg 2.0 right to our coastal shores to feed, it begs a really fascinating question. How would the ecosystem respond? If we entertain the survival of prehistoric titans, will an entirely new resurrected creature, perhaps something like the legendary giant snake, the titanoboa, rise up from the deep to fight back? It's a speculative showdown that leaves us eagerly looking at the fossil record, just wondering what else Mother Nature is capable of. Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and keep your eyes on the water.